Argentina won the World Cup at home. Less than a mile from the stadium, in a Navy building, the same government was torturing its own people to death, and the prisoners could hear the crowd roar.
This is History Parody Radio. Set the dial to June 1978, Buenos Aires. This Sunday, Argentina walks out for a World Cup final again. So before the anthem plays, here is the last time they hosted one, and what the world was not allowed to see.
2 years earlier, in March of 1976, the army had taken the country in a coup. At the top stood a general named Jorge Rafael Videla, thin, quiet, church on Sundays. He called what came next the process of national reorganization.
And what was the process?
A machine for making people disappear. Students, unionists, journalists, anyone the generals decided was the enemy, taken from their homes in the night, driven to secret centers, and never returned. The country would end up counting them in the tens of thousands.
And the largest of those centers, the Navy Mechanics School, ESMA, sat on a wide avenue in Buenos Aires. Less than a mile up that same avenue, they were finishing the stadium for the final.
Some of the people taken to ESMA were drugged, loaded onto Navy planes, and dropped alive into the wide brown river that runs past the city. They call them the death flights. There are no graves because that was the point. And in the middle of all of it, a football tournament was coming to town.
Because the generals did not just tolerate the World Cup, they needed it.
Think about what a host World Cup is. For a month, every camera on earth points at your country. The junta had a problem. The outside world was starting to ask about the disappearances. And here came the perfect answer. A party too big and too happy to look behind.
So the money moved. New stadiums. Color television beamed abroad for the first time. A slogan on every wall. 25 million Argentines, one team. A country in mourning was ordered to smile for the cameras.
And it nearly did not happen. Abroad, people had seen enough to call for a boycott. Play football in a country that is disappearing its own citizens? Committees formed. Newspapers argued.
And in the end?
In the end, every team that qualified got on the plane. Every one. The boycott talked itself out. The best player in the world, the Dutchman, Johan Cruyff, was the one big name who stayed home. And for years, people called it a protest. He said later it was something else. Armed men had tied up his family in their own apartment months before. He would not leave them to fly to Argentina.
But the cameras the junta invited to hide the crime also filmed the people trying to expose it.
Every Thursday, in the square in front of the presidential palace, a group of mothers had begun to walk in a slow circle, white cloths on their heads, photographs of their children pinned to their chests, their sons and daughters where they disappeared, and they were asking the one question the state would not answer.
Where are they? That is what the sign says. Where are they? And now, with the world's press in town for the football, the foreign journalists finally had someone brave enough to say it into a microphone. And then came a football match so strange that people still argue about it, 50 years later.
Second round. To reach the final ahead of Brazil, Argentina did not just need to beat Peru. They needed to beat Peru by 4 clear goals. A tall order against a decent side with a fine goalkeeper.
And what did they win by?
6-0, not 4, 6. Exactly enough, and then some. And the questions started before the players had even left the pitch.
Because of what happened off it. In the days around that match, Argentina shipped 35,000 tons of grain to Peru. Soon after, the junta unfroze tens of millions of dollars in Peruvian money. And minutes before kickoff, General Videla himself walked into the Peruvian dressing room with Henry Kissinger at his side to wish them well.
Now, and this matters because we tell it straight, None of it was ever proven. The players on both sides have always denied it. FIFA never moved. It may have simply been a great team having its best day against a team that folded.
But here is the thing about a dictatorship. When the government that runs the secret prisons also runs the football federation, also controls the grain, also controls the banks, you never get to be sure the game was clean. The regime poisoned even its own victories. Write that down. That is the real price of the alibi. 25th of June, 1978, the final, Argentina against the Netherlands, in a stadium buried under torn white paper.
The Dutch were the better footballing nation, twice a finalist, robbed of Cruyff but still brilliant. And the day begins with a message. The Argentine team stays in the tunnel, keeping the Netherlands standing on the freezing pitch, and then complains about a small cast on a Dutch player's wrist. Little games before the big one.
And then a man with long hair and a black number 10 takes over. Mario Kempes. He scores in the first half. The Dutch drag it level in the last minute of normal time. A whole nation's heart stops, and it goes to extra time.
In extra time, Kempes scores again, weaving through half a defense to do it. Bertoni makes it 3-1. The referee blows the whistle, and the loudest noise in the history of the country goes up at once.
The captain lifts the trophy. Kempes finishes as the tournament's top scorer and its finest player. And up in the stands, in a good coat, General Videla watches his plan come true. The whole world is looking at Argentina, and it is smiling.
For one night, the alibi worked perfectly. The morning country really did pour into the streets. The joy was real. That is the cruel part. The joy was completely real. And it was standing on top of something.
Because less than a mile away, the people in ESMA heard all of it.
We know this because some of them lived and testified. In the basement of the Navy building, prisoners did forced labor in a room they nicknamed the Fish Bowl. On the night of the final, a guard wheeled in a television set so the captives could watch the country celebrate.
One woman who survived that basement wrote a single sentence about that night years later. If they won, we lost. Because every roar from the stadium was also the sound of the machine that was killing her friends, being cheered by the whole world.
Survivors have described being taken out of the center during the tournament and driven through the celebrating streets by their guards. A taunt and a warning. Look how happy the country is. Nobody is coming for you. And the flights over the river did not stop for the football. The party and the killing ran in the same city on the same nights.
That is the sentence the confetti was written to bury. That a stadium and a torture center can stand a mile apart, and the same anthem can reach both, and only one of the two rooms is allowed to be seen. But the mothers kept walking.
The junta fell a few years later, wrecked by its own economy and a lost war in the South Atlantic. And when it fell, the country did something rare. It put its own generals on trial. Videla, who had watched the final in his good coat, went to prison for crimes against humanity and died there.
Argentina wrote it all down. The prisons, the flights, the names it could recover. The report that gathered it took its title from two words the mothers had turned into a promise. Never again.
And the football? Some of the players carried it for the rest of their lives. The sense that their greatest day had been used as a curtain. The cup is still in the record books. 1978, champions, Argentina. History does not erase the goal. It just insists you know what stood behind it.
So here it is, in two rooms a mile apart. In one, a nation lifting the World Cup for the first time, and meaning every tear of it. In the other, people who could hear that joy through a wall, waiting for a plane over the river. Same city, same summer, same flag.
This Sunday, that same blue and white walks out for another final, in another country, in front of the world again. It is a different Argentina now, one that dug up its own graveyard and told the truth about it. That is the harder victory, and it was won by mothers in white headscarves, not by anyone in a good coat. History Parody Radio. Some of it really happened this way. Subscribe, and we will stand in the next room.